And let's start this second seminar of the Association for the Advancements of Affective Computing seminar series. It is my pleasure to welcome Catherine Pelachaud for this second seminar, the second talk, who is Director of Research at the moment in the ISIR laboratories, is intelligent and robotic systems at Sorbonne University in Paris. Her research, well, I don't think she really needs a presentation, but I kind of had to present. So her research interests include social interactive agents, nonverbal communication through different modalities, multi-party interaction. And if I had to use a word to summarize her research, that would be Greta. I think that many of you will know this virtual humanoid that she has developed over decades, and I guess she will be very present in the talk. Well, she has authored over 200 articles and is very active in different communities and international conferences on virtual agents, but also the affective computing one. And she was one of the researchers at the core of the project, the European project that was initiated this affective computing community, the HUMANE project. So more recently, she is co-editor of the Asian Handbook on Social Interactive Agents, and she is going to talk about endowing socially interactive agents with socio-emotional behaviors. So, Catherine, the floor is yours, and I think you have to unmute and share your screen. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I mean, it's true that affective computing is very important for me, and I love this community. So, I'm very honored to be part of it and to present the work we'll be conducting with the Greta. So, it's through all our work since, I don't know, many years is included in these agent platforms. And I'm going to present some of the work we've been conducting. So I may go back to some earlier work, and after I will be presenting newest work. So I hope you can see my screen. Let me do. Yeah, can you all see my screen now?
Yes, there seems to be like a little black line on top.
Yeah, I don't know.
That wasn't there when we tested.
How do you
I don't know. Oh, it moves. So, and it's making it. And maybe share again.
So it's just on the top.
Yeah, it's just at the top. So maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's just because of the. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I can't. I don't know how to get rid of this.
Oh, okay. Maybe it won't bother us.
Okay, so I'm going to present some work we've been conducting over the years, and so we want to work with those socially. Oh, why? Oh no, it doesn't work any longer. No. So let me. Sorry, my computer. Okay, it's old. I'm changing computer now, and my fear is that it's doing a blue screen. So you're going to see a very fight face when he starts. That will be quite pleasant. So let me start again.
Yeah.
And I don't touch it after. Okay, so what we like to work is on the social interactive agent, and it's a definition that was provided in the book, in the handbook of social interactive agent that is just published, and it was proposed by Birgit Lucran in the book. And so SIAs is a virtual or physically embodied, and what matters is that they're autonomous and they're able to perceive the environment, able to reason, decide, and also express a variety of phenomena, and such as social attitude, emotion, show its engagement, interaction, or sometimes even empathy. And what matters is that they're socially embedded and they're using multimodal communicative behaviors in order to support humans in various domains. So in my lab, we'll be working a lot on expressing behaviors, expressing social attitude, expressing intention, communicative intention, emotion, and showing different behaviors to enhance engagement of the users in the interaction. And I'm going to show some of the work we've been conducting over the year in this regard. So here is what we want to do. And so we have these humans interacting with the virtual agent, and we really want to go from the perception to the cognitive process to the decision and the generation, and to simulate this loop between the two entities of these interactions, right? And here I focus mainly on expressions and also on adaptation, okay? So when we first started working with the virtual agent, first of all, it was a floating talking heads. That was the name that we'll use at the early start. And so we realized a lot on work from Polekman's description and all his followers that provide a description of the different facial expression, prototypical facial expressions as a list of action units that could be reproduced on the virtual agent. And there was also this book by Fejin, I don't know how to pronounce it, that also is based on Polekman's work, and that serves as information on the expression to show on our virtual agent. Then the virtual agent cannot show only those expressions, because I mean they're very emoticon-like. And we also wanted that it was part of the humane, where we learned that the expression of emotion in a context, in interaction, is much more different than those six basic emotions, six basic expression. And there's a lot of expression happening as superposition of emotion, one emotion masked by another one, and that can be due to the social context, the events, and things like that. And we wonder, how could we create on our virtual agent the expression to show those complex emotions? And we've developed these algebraic specifications where the facial expression, for example, of sadness masked by anger, is a composition of different signals of the expression of anger, of the expression of sadness, and that can be done through different models for that. And as we work in the humane project, and really it's linked to our knowledge, getting more, being more acquainted with the domain of human emotions, we found out that the expression of emotion is not at its apex. It arrives, it's built on the face as an expression, as an emotion. A situation is being, how do you say, interpreted or built, it's being viewed on the face, a place on the face, a place. And for that, we looked at corpora of people really showing different expression and that. And we extracted manually at the times the different behaviors that were shown. So it was with action unit, it was also body movements, head movement, and things like that. And when we got all those data for the different emotions, we built models that view the expression of emotion as a sequence of signals. So here you have an expression and examples of showing embarrassment. And these models allow us to create different sequence of action for a given emotion. So it allows us also to have variability in the expression of the agent. So we continue working on that. And when Lola asked me to present, and he says, maybe it's good that you present several of the work you've been conducting, I went and looked at the different work we've been conducting over the year. And there's this work on smiles that I particularly like. And it's work that was conducting with Magali Ox. She was a postdoc with me at the time. And it was part also of a larger project as a Spinet on social signals processing. And I like this work by the methodology we applied. And it changed right now because we're using a deep learning, and that I'm going to present some of the work. And why did we work on smile? Smile is crucial. I mean, as we all know, it has a different meaning, and there's many, many different types of smiles. And there's also different effect on the smile and for the perception of smiling humans, but also on a virtual agent. So we wanted to study smile. And for that, we're conducting different studies, and I'm going to go through those studies. First, we needed a corpus. So how to create a corpus, then to validate the corpus, then measure the effect on the user's perception of the virtual agent, and find out the effect of smile during an interaction. Okay. So at the time, there was the models to analyze humans' behaviors. Human facial action were not that reliable, and so we decided also to build our own system. So we created a virtual agent, an interface where you have different parameters linked to smile. So the type, the amplitude of the smile, the opening of the mouth, the symmetry of the smile, the tension in the lips, and also the timing. And we asked participants to create, for example, a polite smile or an embarrassed smile or a happy smile. And people, by manipulating the different value of those parameters, they would create a smile, and they will answer after if they're happy or not with the smile they created. So at the times, we send it around, and we got quite a lot of corpus of smile. And at the time it was quite a lot. Now with deep learning, it's not so much, but still. And for that, we were able to characterize the action unit and the different parameters that is involved for a polite smile or an embarrassed smile and things like that. But as you can see, the smile that we're creating is out of the blue. There's no context. We just say polite smile without anything. So that's why having those characteristics of the smile, it needed to be evaluated. Okay. So then we decided to use to evaluate the smile in a given context. For that, we consider different short scenarios that depict politeness, situation, amusement, or embarrassment. And we ask participants to make the link between a given scenario and the different type of smiles that they were displaying. And like that, by making this simple mapping scenario that was validated and the type of smiles that were created, we were able to validate somehow the corresponding between the smile as it was built and its association to a given scenario. But again, this is not an interaction. So that we wanted to see how smile as produced by the virtual agent, how it is perceived by the users. So we created a scenario where the agent would say a riddle, because we wanted to work on a specific type of smile. And when it says, so it's in French, I'm sorry, but it's going to be of the type. Good morning, I know little riddle. What is the future of yawn, of I yawn? Silence, pause, then the punchline, I sleep. Okay. So, and we had several of those riddles, and they all were built on the same type. Okay. And we created a different stimuli of the agent saying this riddle by placing a smile or not before, after, and during the joke. So that was very finely placed. Let me show you an example.
Bonjour,
Voilà, smile.
je connais une petite blague. Qu'est-ce que c'est qu'un canif? Un petit chien.
Happy smile. Okay, so you could see.
À une prochaine pour une autre blague.
You could see, and a polite smile again. So you could see examples of placement, different type of smiling. And for that, we ask participants how they evaluated the virtual agent. And that show us, I mean, it start to give us information how the agent is perceived in interaction. But still, it's not an interaction. It was like the agent, as the humans were viewing videos. So, the fourth studies we've done was to place the agent in an interaction. So at the times, which has just developed a human agent platform. It was our first human agent interaction platforms, where the agent was able to be an active listener, a sensitive listeners, we call it at the times. And the participant could talk about anything, and the agent would show that it's participating to the interaction. And so the users we ask them to do like 3 minutes of small talk conversations. And we had 2 conditions, a male agent or a female agent. And the agent would use smile or no smiles. And they will also doing some imitation of the user smile or not. And then we were able to, we conducted some questionnaires where we asked questions about personality of the users and also the perception of the users of the virtual agent. Okay. And what we found is that most of the people didn't, I forgot to say that participants participated to the 2 conditions, smile and no smile. And most of the people didn't notice there was a change in the behaviors, the smiling behavior of the virtual agent. And we found that the smiling agent was perceived as more natural, polite, fun, and less boring, less cold, and more spontaneous. So that was what we wanted. And also there was a difference between the female agent and the male agent, but we cannot really conclude anything of that because there was only 2 agents. All right. So as you can see, these methodologies, we go from creating a signals, and after we go and evaluate the different signals in different situations and making it more and more complex to arrive to human-agent interaction. Okay, so that was for SMILE. And lately, we wanted to work also on social attitude and interpersonal attitude. And for that, we refer to the definition of Klaus Schwerer that defines the interpersonal attitude as an affective style that spontaneously develops or is strategically employed in the interaction between persons, and it colors the interpersonal exchange in that situation. So how can we represent in the behaviors of a virtual agent this coloring of the communication? That's something that we wanted to look at. So we decided to represent the notion of social attitude as sequences of multimodal behaviors. So we went back to a corpus, and we wanted to understand what makes a person appear more dominant or less friendly. So we wanted to understand which are the behaviors that act on this variation of perception. And we looked at the perception of this variation of attitude. And for that, we extracted, I'm sorry for, it is a mess in my presentation. We we extracted the sequences of non-verbal behavior during a change of perception. So let me explain the way we've done it. So we started from a corpus and of a DL, human-human interaction. And we done two types of annotation. We annotated the non-verbal behaviors of humans. It's at the level of its postures, gaze behavior, smiles, arms positions, scratch and head movement. And we also annotated the social attitude. And for that, we did two annotations for the dominance, but also for the friendliness along the two axes. And while for the behaviors, those are discrete annotation. There's a head nod, there's a smile, beginning, end. For the social attitude, we use a continuous annotation. And so at this point, we were interested, what happened in this change of behavior here and here? So we looked at all the increase, for example, in the dominance axis, and we looked at the behaviors that occur during this variation. We extracted all the signals that happen in our data set in this variation of perception. Okay. Once we have all those sequences of behaviors, we extracted them, the most common one. So which one are the patterns for that arise during this change of perception? Okay. And like that, we could have quite a lot of temporal patterns that somehow convey dominance increase or dominance decrease, the same for friendliness. Okay. And when we have those patterns, we could replicate them in the virtual agent. And since the virtual agent is conveying also its communicative intention, we merge the two behaviors. So once we have again those animations that were created for variation of social attitude, we also evaluated it on our virtual agent. So let me show you an example where the agent said the same sentence, but with the notion of dominance increase or dominance decrease.
We will contact you within 1 week to let you know what we have decided. In your previous professional experiences, what made you the most proud?
Oh, you could see that there was a posture shift difference and also a hand rest position that was different, the smile or a head nod that differed. And after we asked participants to define the perception of the virtual agent along the axis of dominance and submissiveness and friendliness and hostility. And we use different adjectives for the different octant. And we could find that, for example, when there's a dominance increase, the participants are perceived as more forceful, but less cheerful, less warm, more arrogant, and things like that. The same for friendliness decrease. The participants will be less cheerful, less cooperative, and perceived as more aggressive and more arrogant. So it gave us some information on the perception as a virtual agent based on its variation, the change of behaviors, and also that there's this correlation between the attitude dimension that we could reproduce in our study. So far, I've been focusing a lot on visual behaviors, on mainly how the agent can express different emotion, different social attitude, and things like that. But there's one particular modality which is also crucial in the communication, and that is social touch. And that is a direction we've been doing in the past years. So social touch, we know, is very important touch communicate different intention, and also social touch can be also used to attract attention, to manage turn taking, to reconfort, to calm down, to facilitate bonding. All right. And the interpretation of touch, as for the other signals, is very much linked to multimodality. So the impression of this handshaking is completely different based on the behaviors of the facial expression of the smell than those two images. Okay. And it also gives information about the relationship between the toucher and the touch. Okay, so the first study, as for the smile, the first study we've done with the touch was to understand how to characterize the touch to convey different emotions. So we wanted to conduct this study. So we started again from the literature to find out which factors are pertinent in touch. And in the literature, they talk a lot about velocity, amplitude of the touch, the force of the touch, and also if it is repetitive touch, like that, a tap or a stroke or a caress, like that. So we used robotic arms, where a big one, the QK, where we attach a hand, a plastic hand, and we reproduced on the forearms of the participants the different movement. So we created different stimuli where we use different value of the velocity, fast or slow, different amplitude, short or long, force also, low or strong, and those different type, simple touch, stroke, or a tap. Okay, and so participants couldn't view as the robotic arm. It was a bit frightening to have this huge robot and this hand floating at the end of the robotic arms. And we asked participants, after each touch that was produced by the robot, to evaluate on the valence arousal dimension how they perceive the touch. Okay. And what they found, and we put them a headphone because the robot is quite noisy when it moves, so that's why they have this headphone on. Yeah, and this thing was only used for answering the questionnaires. And what we found is that the velocity, amplitude, and the force had a significant effect on the perception. So we use those variables to be able to conduct our second study, where here we looked at the different touch characteristics and the emotion perception. So we had, again, 8 stimuli, and we asked again question about balance and arousal. And here we found what we could imagine that for the balance, fast and large amplitude stimuli I perceive are more pleasant than short and slow, and the force factor is so negatively correlated with balance. As for arousal, it was the velocity factors that was positively correlated with the perception of arousal. So like that, after those studies, we were able to have somehow a dictionary of the different type of touch that could be used to convey emotion. But we know that those depend very much on the context. And like that, we arrive to studies where we place the humans in interaction with a virtual agent, and we wanted to use touch. So we use VR, a virtual reality settings, a cave, where we wanted to understand how touch can help virtual agent to express emotion and also to bond with the humans. So we wanted with a work on developing a decision models that would trigger when an agent can touch the humans and which type of touch, and also how the agent can interpret human touch and react to it. Okay, so not only the agent can touch the humans, but also the human can touch the agent. And touch is a specific modality, and the notion of touch acceptability is crucial in the study. So we wanted really to pay very much attention to this notion of touch acceptability by the humans. Okay. So the framework is that it is for the decision model, so it's quite classic. So we have developed models to enable the agent to detect when it is touch, and we also use a haptic device we developed, what we call softly, that can reproduce touch on the humans. Softly is somehow a part of a sleeve that is attached on the forearms of the person, and we're using voice calls that is attached to the sleeve, and by activating the voice calls with different waves, you can simulate different type of touch with different strengths and velocities. All right. And we can also use VR tracking to understand where the humans is, so the agent can go and touch it and do the movement. So for the touch perception, we're using the colliders technique that was proposed by Nguyen and Vashmus some times ago, that put tactile cells on the virtual agent, and you simply looked at the intersection between the hand of the participants and the cell on the body, and it tells you exactly where there is an intersection. And for the decision models, we looked at different aspects. So we needed to have information on the humans. We're in a VR setting, so we have quite a lot of sensors that allows us to find out where the human is gazing at, the distance between the humans and the virtual agent, so the proximities, and we can compute if it is the intimate, personal, social, or public space. And also using this information here, the colliders, we can find out where there's a touch and which body part. So we use, for the decision models, we used the Fatima emotion model that was developed by Diaz and Anna Paiva's group, that is able to compute an agent emotional state based on different events. So use different appraisal aspects, okay? And the agent also built models of the human's emotional state. And from that, it's also built models of the rapport between the humans, how the humans is building a rapport with the agent. And we use the emotion balance that we compute, and also the human level of attentiveness that is built on from the gaze direction of the humans and its proximate value. Okay. And we also use another variable, which is called human touch avoidance. And so far, we didn't know how to compute it automatically. So we asked participants to enter if there is low, accept to be touched, or not, low, medium, high. Okay. And the output of such models is what the agent should say next, with which nonverbal behaviors, including touch. So we consider different function of touch here in these models. So attention getting, like trying to grab the attention of the agent, turn management, also emotional emphasis, and also supporting, calming and comforting. And we had different types of touch that the agent could display. Unfortunately, the last year of this study was done during the COVID situation. So as you can imagine, during COVID, being in VR, in the cave, and working on touch is completely incompatible. So we had to back up completely for our study, and did no more VR, but virtual environment. So we reproduced the scenario we had built in, and we did it in this virtual environment, where the scenario was a discussion on the experience of lockdown. It was quite but personal for the student. Yeah. And we consider two things. The autonomous agent is this character, and the avatar is this character. So we use two females, so like that we didn't have to manipulate the effect of gender for the test, which can be quite critical, and that was not implemented in the models, right? And so the agent is 100% driven by the models, while the avatar is driven by humans. Okay, and so let me show you an example of the videos.
Maintenant, j'ai l'impression que je rechute un peu. Ça redevient vraiment insupportable et fatigant psychiquement. J'en peux plus quoi. J'ai envie
So
de
we have the
contact
humans
social et de
touching the
pouvoir juste
agent.
voir mes amis, faire des activités dehors. C'est hyper frustrant et déprimant. C'est comment pour toi cette année par rapport à l'année dernière?
Pour moi, je dirais que ça va quand même. J'ai appris à faire avec la situation.
There's
Je ne
big
souffre
voice,
plus autant
and that's
d'isolement.
different.
Je profite de toutes les occasions pour aller faire un tour dehors.
This is-
Même niveau boulot, ça va. Mais ce qui est vraiment angoissant, c'est de ne pas savoir quand ça va finir tout ça.
And this is a
Et
comforting
quand on pourra
smile.
à nouveau aller dans le restaurant et au cinéma et tout ça. C'est vraiment ça qui est le plus dur.
All right. Okay, so having that, we ask participants if they recognize the different type of smiles and how it impacted the perception of the interaction and things like that. Okay, so we're redoing the study in VR, not with the same scenario. Now we don't want to talk about lockdown anymore, and hopefully in a few months we'll be able to show new result on social touch. Okay, so I think that I'm going quite late, but I'm going to talk a little bit on work we've been conducting also on adaptation, what is happening during an interaction, okay? And during an interaction, what we have is that we have a lot of different mechanisms of adaptations that can be signaled through imitation, synchronization, verbal alignment, motor resonance, back channeling, and things like that. So there's a lot of phenomena that is happening during interaction between the two interlocutors. And we know that adaptation favor engagement, it's a signals for interpersonal relationship, it allows to establish trust, to increase rapport and all that. So we wanted to really have our agent that can adapt to users' behaviors, okay? So for that, we're conducting several studies, okay? So we looked at different type of adaptations that I'm going to present rapidly. Some that is adaptation as a non-verbal behaviors and as a conversational strategies and at the Q levels. Okay, so let me show you. For that, we looked at 2 dimensions because we want to have the agent that adapt to the users in order to enhance the engagement in the interaction. And for that, the agent we work along 2 dimensions. And we chose the social and competence dimension, which are crucial for in interactions setting. For warmth, we looked mainly at showing friendliness or cooperation factors. And for competence, we look at social competence, being able to manage an interaction. We didn't look at the other type of competence in our study. Okay. So we went back to a corpus that we had created, where we had 2 participants interacting, which was just through a screen. We wanted to see how it is to somehow simulate human agent interaction, human machine interaction by putting a screen between the 2 participants. And we evaluated again the corpus along videos, behaviors. So we looked at communicative behaviors, head movement, facial expression, but also rest positions, as well as the continuous dimension of warmth and of competence. Okay, and having those studies, we computed different measure of association between warmth, the perception of warmth and competence, and the different nonverbal behaviors. And we found that there is positive association between different type of rest position, or negative association between different type of rest position and the perception of warmth and the perception of competence, identically for different type of communicative gestures. Here we consider speech gestures, these rhythmic gestures, and the additional gestures were to be that will encompass metaphoric, iconics, emblems, didactic gestures, conduit gestures, and all that. And we found again a positive association between for the warmth and competence. And the same for the smile. We have this composition effect between warmth and competence. Okay, so that is linked on the humans. So again, we have to see what is happening for the virtual agent. So we created a stimuli where we have the agent saying the same sentence, and we manipulate the type of behaviors is showing, the type of rest position or smiling behavior and things like that. So let me show you.
When planning a journey, you have to plan 50% of it. This consists in collecting information from books and what people tell us, concerning, for example, monuments, places, and etc. The other 50% is total improvisation.
Okay, so a rest position, smiling, is doing quite a lot of additional units, additional gestures.
When planning a journey, you have to plan 50% of it.
So many bits.
This consists in collecting information from books and what people tell us, concerning, for example, monuments, places, and etc. The other 50% is total improvisation.
Okay, and again, we ask participants how to evaluate the social attitude of the agent, and we found that there's significant effect on the gesture types and rest pose, but we couldn't find a composition effect of the smile. Okay. So having that, we went into modeling the adaptation mechanisms. And so we built an interaction and architectures where we have models, perception models that detect information, visual and acoustic information of the users. We have a dialogue models and the agent behavior model, which is the Greta, and the adaptation mechanisms. And we consider different aspects of the adaptation mechanisms. Here we're using reinforcement learning. That means that we want the agent to learn how to behave, to adapt its behaviors, and by learning how it fits better to given human interlocutors. And we manipulate type of gestures that the agent is doing. Okay, the different rest positions, and also is smiling or not, and we're manipulating the verbal behaviors. It's using short sentences, the type of pronoun is using you, I, we, and if it's using formal language, long sentences or not. Okay, and the way it works is that the user's behaviors is analyzed and is interpreted, and we were using models for detecting the impression, the user's impression of the agent warmth and competence. Okay. And based on this value, the agent selects a given, for his communicative intention, a different set of behaviors to convey this communicative intention. So big gestures and additional gestures or no gesture at all, smile, no smile, and things like that. And there's a reward function, which is linked to the detected impression. Okay, so if the agent has the goal to appear warm, we detect that in the user's behavior, and the reward function is allows the agent to learn as the interaction goes on to adapt best its behaviors. And what we found that it didn't work perfectly in all the conditions. So we had a warmth condition where the agent wanted to appear warm, and competence condition where the agent wanted to appear competent. And we had a significant difference that the agent appeared more competent than in the random conditions, while we had no significant difference for the warm condition, but just a trend. Okay. So, for example, an example of what the agent learned at the end of an interaction that to maximize the perception of warmth, the agent shouldn't perform too much gestures. I should do a certain akimbo, smiles, and use a certain verbal type strategies. So these studies work on given intention, how to communicate this intention. We wanted also to understand if the adaptation mechanism could arrive before, so before the dialogue models, the instantiation into behaviors. So here in these studies, we wanted to have the agent to learn the best combination of conversational strategies. And the goal of the agent is always to engage the users. So we consider 4 different conversational strategies. Ingratiations, where the goal of the agent is to appear warmer. Supplication, the goal of the agent is to appear warmth by decreasing the impression of competence is providing, and the same for at the level of competence, intimidation, and self-promotion. And we manipulated them the same for the instantiation into behaviors, the same verbal, as I mentioned before. So you and we word, level of formality of the language, the length of the sentence, and things like that. And for the non-verbal behaviors, the different portraying of warmth and competence that we found in the previous study. So as a reward function, it was user engagement. And here are the examples. And I forgot to mention that all the studies were conducting in a museum of science in Paris, the largest museum of science. And we had different conditions. And here, here are examples of result where for a given interactions, you can see that the agent is trying the different conversational strategies, but at the end, learn somehow the strategies that fit better for given participants. Okay, so it takes more and more times, depending on the participants, for having a convergence of the system. But in this study, it's work at, so the users is saying something, our models is analyzing the user's behavior, making interpretation, and decide how the agent should behave, then compute the reward function, and it goes on. So you can see that the adaptation is happening at the turn level. While during an interaction, sometimes there is this low-level interaction when we have imitation of behaviors, posture, smiles, and we have this motor resonance that can happen during the participants. So we wanted really to see what is happening there. So for example, if one speaker smiles, the others imitate the smile, and this imitation of smile somehow increase the smiling of the first person. So we have this loop, behavior loop between the participants. So we wanted to capture this aspect. So we looked at again a human-human study, a human-human corpus, and we here the adaptation mechanisms goes from the user's analysis. We detect these signals up to the agent's behaviors. Okay, so it bypasses somehow dialogue models, choice of non-verbal behavior, and things like that. So it's really from signal to signals. Okay, and we developed a models using deep learning approach where we train these models a corpus, a human-human interaction corpus, where the models learn, given the behavior of a person A and the behavior of the person B, what should be the behaviors of person A. And we replace one of the person by the agent. So like that, I'm going to show you videos where we have here a human that is interacting, and it was with another human, and we replace one of the humans by the virtual agent. And the behavior of the virtual agent is 100% driven by this models, the adaptation models, right? And there's no Greta that computes its behaviors at the end. Okay. So sorry, it's in French again.
Que j'ai tellement pris l'habitude de quand écouter, c'est pas juste pour écouter pour suivre, que maintenant, un matin, je me dis, ah tiens, j'ai envie d'écouter de la musique, je mets cette musique, et je suis pas du tout concentrée, je suis avec eux, je chante avec eux, et tout. Et là, j'arrête, et je dis, parce que sinon, je vais pas bosser, là, aujourd'hui. Ah non, mais moi, pour bosser, je fais de la musique classique.
D'accord.
Du Chopin.
Okay. All right. So, at the end, we're conducting some synchrony measures to see if our system is able to capture what is happening, the behaviors, the quality of the behaviors in the interactions, and that. And now we are replacing the video of a human with a real human to have it in interaction. The difficulty of such a system is that it works frame by frame. So we need to compute the behavior of the virtual agent at the frame level. And that is technically a bit challenging for us right now. Okay, so that concludes my talk. Sorry to be long, and just by saying that we are continuing working on touch. We are developing several models to drive the virtual agent behaviors, and like to work also on multi-party interaction. So far, our interaction we've been looking at is mainly dyadic interaction, but often we interact with more people than that. And also considers not only smile, but also laughter, which is a very important social behavior in interaction. Okay, thank you. Is there any question? And let me take out that so I can see what is happening.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for this really nice overview of your work and touching up on so many different topics. So people can unmute yourselves if you want to clap. Otherwise, I clap on behalf of everyone. And I can see already some hands. Okay, I'm going to stop recording for the questions so that people, maybe feel better